All right, well, welcome and thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedules to join us today and learn a little bit more about learning how to befriend our emotions in recovery. My name is Susan Bolio. I'm an extension educator with University of Minnesota Extension, Family Development and Family Resilience. Let's see here. I do that a lot, my apologies. So Rick is gonna go ahead and throw a poll up quickly. If you would please just share if you are participating today for personal use, professional use, or both. It looks like maybe just a couple more folks. Actually, that might be me and you, Rick, who aren't. So we'll leave the poll open for maybe 10 more seconds. You haven't had a chance to
when are you going to be done for the day?
Identify yet.
This afternoon.
All right. So it looks like a little over 50% are here for both personal and professional, 29% for professional and 18% for personal. Can you see the results on your end?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you so much. All right. So this is our web producer for today, Rick Meyer. If you have any tech issues, questions, his phone number is here, his email is here. Please feel free to connect with him. You definitely do not want my support. I, in fact, asked for Rick's help this morning and getting set up with some things. So he's fantastic. If you have any issues, please contact Rick. What keeps doing that? All right. So we're going to start our time together with a practice. This is a practice that if you've been with me before, you know this is a really foundational practice, something that I teach often, comes from the Center for Mind Body Medicine, their curriculum. And it's literally a practice I do multiple times throughout the day. It really helps me to ground. Just super quick, there's a nerve called the vagal nerve, which means wandering, that connects from the base of the brain around the heart and stomach, and it sort of connects in with all of the different organs in the torso. And so when we can breathe slow and deeply into the belly, it activates that vagal nerve, which then sends the message back to the brain that we're safe. If we were literally running or fighting for our life, taking that slow, deep belly breath would be impossible. So the fact we can take it means that we're safe. So let's just take a few moments and ground ourselves, doing the soft belly breathing. You can do this eyes open or closed, whatever feels best for you. Just getting your body into a comfortable position where your torso is nice and upright so you can allow that air to come deep into the diaphragm. Inhaling in through the nose. Exhaling out through the mouth. And as you breathe in through the nose, imagine the belly is like a balloon that you're slowly blowing up. And then you're slowly releasing that air out of the balloon out through your mouth. And you can think to yourself, soft as you breathe in and belly as you breathe out. Just to remind yourself to keep your belly nice and relaxed, allowing that air to come deep into the diaphragm. You can use your exhale to release any tension you might notice in the body. And then let's take one final grounding breath together, inhaling deeply in through the nose. Exhaling slowly out of the mouth. And then if you had your eyes closed, you can go ahead and open your eyes, bringing yourself back into the space. And let's just take a moment to pause and notice, sort of checking in with our physical body, checking in with our emotions, checking in with our thoughts, the quality of our thoughts, how quickly or how slowly thoughts are moving, coming in and out. And then checking in with our sense of connection to ourselves and to others. All right, Miigwech. So we are good. This is just the overview for today. We're going to talk about emotions and sort of how emotions tend to be viewed. And then we're going to look at what they actually are and the role that they play and the importance that they have. And then there are a couple practices. We just did soft belly. That's to help regulate the nervous system. But there are a couple other tools that we will hopefully have a chance to practice today, or at least talk about, so that you have some tangible tools to be able to connect with your emotions. So these are my teachers. I am a mother of 4, and before I had children, I really saw emotions as something that I was supposed to contain, as something that, there were good emotions and bad emotions. But I had a really powerful teaching moment about emotions one time when my daughter, who just turned 12, she was probably about 7 years old, 7 or 8. And I was fairly new to some of the mind-body practice work. And we were on our way home I had brought her with me to one of the communities that I was working in at the time. And she had packed Legos for herself to do. She loves doing Legos, still does. Anyway, so she's in the back of the car on the way home, and she's trying to build a house on her lap out of Legos, and she has no firm platform to build. And so her house is falling apart. She's getting really frustrated. And as I'm driving, like, I literally can start to feel like the anxiety, the energy sort of increasing in the car. And I could feel myself starting to get overwhelmed. And so I look in the rearview mirror and I say, Sophia, just take a couple deep breaths, take some slow deep breaths. So I sort of show her how to do it. And she's in the back going, and I realized that's not helpful. So I was like, it's okay, it's all right. And in that moment, as her energy and her anxiety and her frustration was getting bigger and bigger, and I could feel that energy growing in myself, and my big belly breaths weren't helping me regulate that, I knew in that moment I had 2 choices. I could wig out on her because I couldn't stand what was coming up in me. So I could yell at her to get her to stop, which I didn't want to do, or I could check out, I could dissociate. And my sort of primary coping mechanism for most of my life has been to dissociate, to check out, to no longer be present with what's happening, because it's too much, it's too overwhelming. And so in that moment, I chose what I thought was the lesser of 2 evils. I still think it's a good thing I didn't yell at her. And I was very aware in that moment that I was still sending her the message that her big emotions were not okay, that she needed to shut that down. Because even if we don't say to someone, I'm shutting down emotionally from you, we all have had that experience where somebody is connected with us emotionally and then it leaves, then that emotional connection is gone. So that's a very felt sense that we have. And so I knew that was the message that I was sending her. And I realized in that moment that I would never be able to sit with my kids when they were having big emotions if I didn't first learn how to sit with my own big emotions. So that was really an important and powerful aha for me, and one of the first steps on this journey of really understanding what are emotions and why are they important. And so emotions are often seen in our society as something that's good. Good emotions are joy, happiness, connection, love, excitement, right? But not too much excitement. So they can be good or bad, emotions like anger, frustration, sadness, grief. These are emotions that we don't tend to like to feel. So we sort of label emotions as good, the ones that are easier to feel or we enjoy feeling, and then the ones that we don't like to feel, that are more difficult to be with, we sort of label them as bad. And another thing that we've done in our society is we've sort of created this narrative that, there are certain emotions that are okay to show, others that aren't. And there are certain people who are allowed to show certain emotions and others who aren't. So we've really sort of collectively emotionally stifled males or men in our society, people who identify as men, as people who aren't allowed to show sadness, who aren't allowed to cry. But as we'll talk more about, emotions are part of the human experience for all of us. And so somebody that I've learned some really important pieces around what emotions are is Dr. Susan David. And she has a wonderful TED Talk. It's around, 13 to 15 minutes if you want to check it out. And she says, how we deal with our inner world drives everything. Emotions, as good or bad, positive or negative, is really rigid. And rigidity in the face of complexity is toxic. What we need is emotional agility. So we need a way to think about and frame emotions. We need a structure that allows for that flexibility, that isn't so rigid, good or bad, right or wrong, and allows for the fluidity and the understanding that emotions are constantly changing. They're constantly in flux. We all have them. And how do we create those spaces and ways of seeing and being with emotions that is supportive for everyone? And so a couple of pieces as I was learning more about emotions and what they are. And, the science is really starting to support some of this understanding that literally everything in our physical realm and environment, whether we can see it, hear it, touch it, measure it, whatever, is a form of energy. And emotions are no different. Emotions are a form of energy. And energy likes to move. Energy tends to move. And so when we have big emotions, and we don't have places and spaces to be able to allow the energy of those emotions to come up and to move through us, that energy gets stuck in our body. And some of us probably, actually for a lot of us, we tend to carry maybe stress or frustration in our shoulders, in our neck. We get tension headaches, we might get migraines as a result. So when you're noticing really tight muscles, that's probably an indication that you're storing some of that energy in your body. Another thing that emotions are is they are chemicals in their body. They literally are like chemical cocktails in our body. So the chemical signature of an emotion like joy is very different than the chemical signature of grief or anger. They have very different neurochemicals, neurotransmitters, different hormones connected to them. So for example, when you're feeling maybe anger, frustration, there's a lot of adrenaline, there's cortisol. And when we are feeling, say, a sense of deep love and connection, our brains and our bodies are being flooded with chemicals like dopamine and oxytocin. So emotions are chemicals in the body. And one of the things that I learned from an organization called the Heart Math Institute, phenomenal resources, is that when we have a really big emotional shift from, say, anger to gratitude, over 1,400 biochemicals shift in our body instantly. And the effects of those shifts can be felt in the body for up to 2 hours. So the emotional states that we're in and the chemicals that go with those emotional states impact our physical body and well-being. And the Heart Math Institute talks about some emotions being regenerative, emotions that help the body to heal and help the body to be well and help the body to be balanced. And there are other emotions that are non-regenerative. So they actually can age the body, they can shorten telomeres, they can cause pain in the body. It makes it hard for the body to heal when we're feeling certain emotions. So they do see emotions as regenerative or non-regenerative, but not good or bad, because they all are part of the human experience. And then another important piece to recognize is that emotions are connected to everything else. And so emotions often first show up as sensations in the body. So this other picture on this slide shows a study that they did, and they looked at like where people tend to feel different emotions in their body, what the sensations feel like, hot or cold, expansive or contractive, all these different things. So this sort of just indicates in general, people tend to feel, you can even just see the difference between happiness and depression, where there's lots of red and yellow in the body, warmth and opening, versus depression is very shut down and cold. So emotions show up as sensations in the body as well. And as I mentioned, and Dr. Susan David talks a lot about, they are part of the human experience. They are part of what she calls the spice of life. And I never really thought about it like this before, but imagine going through our days, living our lives without feeling joy, without feeling excitement, without feeling even frustration or feeling gratitude. There's so emotions help us to more fully experience life in a way that that makes life exciting. So if you think about that, she talks about the spice of life, eating food without any spices, that food gets pretty bland. And so emotions really are what keeps our life exciting and always changing. And our emotions are also constantly changing. They are impermanent. They are invaluable teachers. Even big emotions like anger or frustration can sometimes, if we sense into that, we can get a better idea of, is this coming up because something in the external environment is clashing or colliding with my values, with my beliefs, with my understanding of the world. So they can help us to understand what's happening. Sometimes our emotions might actually be coming up, might be activated because of something unresolved, an experience that we had as a child or a young person or a young adult that's unresolved within us. And so when these big emotions come up, it's an opportunity to allow those emotions that have been stuck in our systems for years or decades, or maybe even generations. We won't talk about epigenetics today, but allow those emotions to move up and out. So our autonomic nervous system, again, emotions are so interconnected with our body. So within the autonomic nervous system, we have the sympathetic nervous system, which controls our fight or flight response. It's essential for short-term survival. And then we have the parasympathetic nervous system, which controls that rest and digest when our body is able to relax, our body is able to heal and rejuvenate. And this is essential for long-term survival. And so I just want to mention too, sort of what happens in the brain when we're having big emotions, especially when our amygdala perceives something in our environment as a threat. So information data is coming in from outside the world. We're taking it in through lots of different ways in our body, including our eyes, our nose, our mouth, what we touch, and also our heart is taking in electromagnetic data and information from outside of us. And our nervous system is also taking in information from inside the body. So what's happening in the stomach and what's happening in the heart and what's happening in different parts of the body. So when information comes in, it comes up, through these different senses, comes up through the spinal cord, up the base of the brain, through the amygdala. This is the handy model of the brain. So this is like the spinal cord, the base of the brain. If you fold your finger in like this, touching your palm, this is your limbic region, hippocampus, amygdala, responsible for the fight or flight response. And if you fold your fingers over, this would be your cortex, and this part here is your prefrontal cortex right behind the forehead, your logical, rational thinking part of the brain. So when information is coming in and the amygdala perceives it as a threat, as a danger to your survival, we flip our lid. And when we flip our lid, the amygdala basically it takes over the brain. It shuts down the thinking part of the brain. Because if you are literally running or fighting for your life, you don't have time to sit and contemplate, should I do this or should I do this? Should I run or should I stay still? Should I play dead? You don't have time. You need to basically react. So it shuts down the thinking part of the brain. And the amygdala then is the part that is making the decisions and reacting to what's happening around you. So I think it's really important for us to understand this isn't big emotions when we feel a threat isn't necessarily just something that we can will ourselves into feeling different about, that it actually has physiological impacts as well as the way that it affects the brain and what parts of the brain are firing and connected and basically making the decisions. And so as I've sort of come to understand emotions and dealing with emotions, I understand that our emotions connect to our thoughts and which impacts our mental well-being. It affects our physical well-being, as we talked about, and it also connects to and impacts our spiritual well-being. And so when we can have a balance in these areas and understand how they're interconnected, it allows us to make decisions and choices that can help us to create a greater sense of balance and ease in our life. And so one of the pieces of this work is starting to expand our emotional vocabulary. I cannot remember right now if it was Dr. Brene Brown or somebody like her who was studying emotions. And most of us on average can only name 6 to 8 emotions. Our emotional vocabulary is incredibly small, and our language shapes our experience and our perception. So if you look and I apologize, I know it might be a little bit small, but if you look at sort of the area of red, so within that, there's furious and angry and irritated. So they're all in the red area, but most of us might not necessarily use the word furious or irritated. We might just say angry, but are you incredibly angry? Are you furious? Or are you just mildly angry? Are you irritated? Like there's a difference in that. And so the more we can expand the language we use for the emotions that are coming up for us, that we are feeling, it helps us to really recognize how the experience is impacting us and what's going on for us, but it also helps us articulate to other people what's going on inside of us. So this comes from a book called Permission to Feel, Unlocking the Power of Emotions to Help Our Kids, Ourselves, and Our Society Thrive. And so again, language really, really matters. And so just sort of running across the top here, I am sad, I am angry, I am hurt, I am happy. Now, this is language we tend to use in our society. But what happens is that when we use language like this, we are sort of tying ourselves to that emotion. I am anger, I am angry versus I'm feeling angry, or I'm noticing that I'm feeling angry. Maybe you feel it in your gut. You feel this heat coming up. Maybe you feel a constriction or something. So you're noticing the feelings that are happening. You are not the feelings, but you're having them, but you are not the feelings. We are much more than that. And so simply adding a word like, I am feeling happy, or I'm noticing that I'm feeling really sad. And maybe even, and I do this with my own kids, starting to articulate, like, where do I feel that? When I'm noticing I'm feeling sad, I feel a tightness in my chest. I feel my shoulders start to droop and come down. I notice my head start to hang. I notice a desire to just go inward and to not interact. So starting to articulate or to share with others what happens inside of our bodies and in our minds when we're feeling these emotions. And so recognizing that emotions are like waves in the ocean, they are constantly changing. And some emotions are bigger than others. Some of those waves are a lot harder to ride than others. But the big waves don't last forever. And I know for me, growing up as a young person, as a teenager, and in my early 20s, I really struggled with depression and anxiety. And there were times where those feelings felt so overwhelming, like it was never going to stop. And so as I've gotten older and started to explore emotions more and observe them, even in the really difficult emotions, my dad passed not this past January, but the January before. And with all of those big emotions of grief that were coming up, it was so helpful for me to just sit and observe them, to watch them, to feel it, but then to also see how it would subside or release even just a little bit. that there was never a constant that was always there. And so learning how to ride those waves, how to navigate those emotions in a good way and not get pulled down underneath them or drowned within them, but learning instead how to ride them and how to navigate them in a good way, which, just like surfing, takes practice. It's not something that any of us just come into and are really good at doing. It takes repetition and practice over and over and over, and creating those spaces where people are allowed to talk about and practice different things that help them to learn to ride the waves of big emotions. One of the, as I've been doing a lot of this work, especially with people in recovery, I often hear things like, I just don't know what to do with the big emotions that are coming up, right? Again, like they haven't had the opportunities, like many of us haven't, to be able to learn how to ride those big emotional waves or deal with the difficult emotions that we've been, using substances to cope with. And so Dr. Julie Brown says the process of healing doesn't always initially lead us to feeling better, because in order to heal, we must allow ourselves to feel again all that we've repressed. Feeling this can be hard, but by doing it, we actually get better, not just feel better. So again, it's this whole notion and understanding that emotions literally are energy that can get stuck in our physical body, in our emotional bodies, in our mental bodies, that then can create all sorts of havoc. And when we, if we want to be able to heal, to actually integrate that, we have to be able to feel that emotion, to allow it to come through and have those safe places and spaces, people, as well as our own tools and ability to navigate those things so that we can move through it. So there are some things we can do to tap into and express our emotions, everything from meditations, body scans. We'll do a body scan in just a little bit. Gratitude practices are phenomenal for this. They help us to sort of wire the brain to notice the good. We have a bias in our brain to remember the bad for the sake of survival. So we sort of have to work extra hard to notice the good. Gratitude practices are a great way to do that. Journaling, music, books, TV, movies, those things that invoke big emotions in us, and learning how to sit with those big emotions as we're listening to a song that really brings, those emotions up for us, or a book or a movie. Art is another great way for us to sort of tap into that emotional experience that we have. And then, of course, finding safe places to be able to share our emotions with other people is a critical piece. This healing work and learning how to navigate all of this is not something that we can do individually. We were wired to be in relationship with one another. With one another. Our nervous systems are literally wired to be in connection and to be impacted by one another. So the notion that we somehow shouldn't be impacted by what's happening around us, or by what is happening with other people around us, is really not a very helpful or accurate representation of what actually is happening inside of us. We're wired to be in connection and relationship. So this is someone who's really informed a lot of my thinking around a whole host of things. Dr. Bruce Perry, again, if you get a chance to look at anything that he's done, it's incredibly helpful. But again, if you think about sort of that handy model of the brain, we have the brain stem down here, which is really what it's most important or most looking for is safety. So you have to have the bottom parts of the brain regulated to be able to connect to and tap in to the part above it. So our brain stem, that sense of safety has to be there. Then our midbrain, our limbic brain, the amygdala, hippocampus is in this midbrain area. Movement and rhythm can be really helpful for being able to regulate this part of the brain. That's the midbrain, the diencephalon. And then the limbic region, you have that emotional engagement, so that connection with other people. And then the cortical region up here, the learning part, the prefrontal cortex. So we can't move up here into the learning part until the other parts of the brain are regulated. And I think this is really important, whether we're working with kids, whether we're working with people in recovery, whether we are talking to our partner or a colleague. If somebody is dysregulated in the lower parts of their brain, nothing that we say is going to reach them up here in their learning brain. We have to co-regulate. We have to create that space of safety, and regulation in order to be able to get up to the learning part of the brain. So again, a lot of times when, and I used to do this all the time too, always thinking about or looking for ways, how can I help other people? How can I be a better mom? How can I help my kids learn to deal with their emotions? And the reality is it always comes back to, what are we able to do and control? And we can't control others around us. And oftentimes we can't even control the situations around us. But with awareness and practice, we can regulate our own nervous systems, which then impacts the nervous systems and the regulation of those around us. So our regulated nervous system is the intervention. That's a quote from Dr. Bruce Perry. So the more that we can learn to be in touch with and in tune with what's happening within us, what are practices and strategies that we can use to be able to regulate our own nervous system, especially before we step into a difficult situation with our kids or with colleagues or with clients or people that we're serving, that we're working with. Knowing where we are in our nervous system is one of the most powerful things that we can do, and then regulating our nervous system. So let me just take a really quick. So actually, let's do, because I think we're coming towards the end, and I think I probably took out the body scan practice thinking we wouldn't have time to do it, but let's start with the body scan, and then we'll move into the heart-centered meditation. So again, both of these practices are practices that help us sort of tune into what's happening for us emotionally, and then to be able to be really intentional about the emotions that we're creating and that we're sending out. So I invite you to get your body into a comfortable position. And if closing your eyes feels good, closing your eyes can help us to go inward and bring our focus and attention in. If closing your eyes doesn't feel good, you can just have a soft gaze down at whatever's in front of you. We're trying to minimize visual distractions out here to bring our attention and focus inward. And so let's just start initially by bringing our focus and attention to the breath. And we're not going to try to do anything different with the breath. We're just going to watch it. In this moment, noticing, are you breathing in or out through your nose or mouth? There's no right or wrong. We're just noticing. And then see if you can follow that breath down into the body. How deeply are you breathing? And again, not changing anything, just noticing. How slowly or quickly are you breathing? How does your body move and shift as the air comes in, filling the lungs, maybe expanding the diaphragm depending on how deeply you're breathing. And then noticing how the body shifts again, contracting and expelling that air back out, releasing the carbon dioxide. And now we're going to bring our focus and attention to the very top of the head. And as we scan down through the body, we're just going to notice the different ways that sensations might show up. We might notice vibration or tingling or a sense of flowing. Or we might notice constriction, tightness, tension, discomfort. Again, no right or wrong, just noticing what's present in the body. And there might be places in the body where we don't feel anything, where there's a sort of disconnect or absencing, and that's information too. No right or wrong, just noticing what's present in this moment. So starting at the top of the head and slowly scanning down the back of the head, noticing any sensations or lack of sensations that might be present. Stopping when you reach where the head and the neck connect. And then coming back up to the top of the head and slowly scanning down the face, noticing sensations in the forehead, in and around the eyes. Becoming aware of what's present in and around the ears and the cheeks. Bringing your awareness to the nose, noticing sensations on the outside of the nose, maybe sensations in the nostrils. Bringing your awareness down to the mouth, becoming aware of sensations on the lips, as well as inside the mouth, on the tongue, the teeth, the gums, the inner cheeks, the back of the throat. Moving your awareness down to the chin and the jaw. Becoming aware of sensations in the neck and in the throat. Moving your awareness down to the shoulders. And then becoming aware of sensations in the arms, the upper arms and the elbows, the forearms, wrists, and hands, noticing sensations or lack of sensation all the way out through the fingertips. Bringing your awareness back up to the shoulders, scanning down the top of the back, noticing what's present in the upper back and around the shoulder blades. Moving your awareness down to the mid-back. And then the lower back. Bringing your awareness around now to the front of the body and noticing sensations in the chest. Maybe once again, noticing the sensations of breathing as air and oxygen come in and fill the lungs. And then how the body moves again as it releases carbon dioxide. Maybe noticing your heart beating. Bringing your awareness now down to the stomach area. And then moving your awareness down to the lower abdomen where the intestines are, the reproductive organs. Noticing sensations in the hips, pelvis, and buttocks. And then bringing your awareness into the legs, becoming aware of sensations in the thighs and hamstrings. Noticing what's present in the knees, shins, and calves. Moving your awareness down into the ankles. And then into the feet, noticing sensations on the bottom of the feet, the top of the feet, and what's present all the way out to the tips of your toes. And we can use our awareness to zoom in on different parts of the body like we just did, or we can expand our awareness out. So let's do that for a few moments and notice all of the different sensations happening across the body, all at the same time. Just watching how the body is talking and communicating across the whole system. And now maybe taking a slightly deeper inhale and a little bit of a longer exhale. Bringing your focus and attention to the heart space. And if it's helpful for you, you can even just gently place a hand over your heart. I'm going to start just taking a few moments, just noticing what's present in the heart space in this moment. Again, no right or wrong, just noticing what's here. And you might not notice anything. You might not feel emotions right now, and that's okay too. We're just noticing what's here in your body in this moment. And our heart is a pretty amazing and powerful part of our body. And in this place and space of our body, we actually have the ability to generate and to grow certain emotions, to grow whatever emotions. But with intention, we can choose what we want to grow and what we want to send out. And so let's take a few moments and invite in the energy and emotions of maybe love, gratitude, joy. And if it's helpful for you, you can think of maybe a person or a place or a situation that really brings this emotion to life for you, either the emotion of love, gratitude, joy. And as this person, place, or situation comes to mind, and you feel that energy in your heart, use your breath to grow that energy. So we're breathing into the heart space, growing that energy, and then exhaling out through the heart space, sending that energy out beyond our physical body to the people and the living beings around us. Again, using your breath to grow that energy, breathing into the heart space, growing that energy, and then as you exhale, sending that energy out beyond your physical body. Taking a few more breaths in the heart center, growing the energy of love, gratitude, or joy, and then sending that out. If you have your hand on your heart, you can just gently place it back in your lap. And then let's close with a grounding breath, a nice big inhale in through the nose. A slow exhale out through the mouth. And then if you had your eyes closed, you can go ahead and open your eyes. Bringing yourself back into the space again, checking in with your body, with your emotions, with your mind and the quality of your thoughts, how quickly they're moving, and your sense of connection to self and others. So I'm going to go through just a couple pieces quick before we sort of open up the space for questions and conversation. So here are some references and resources. We can get this PDF of this sent out to everyone who participated today. If you do need a certificate of participation, there's an evaluation link that Rick will also share in the chat. I believe you'll get it via email, and there's also a link directly in here. But once you complete that, you can request the certificate. Here is the link for the evaluation. Again, Rick will also share that with you. And then watch for a follow-up email about, actually it'll be a little more than 30 days. I think if I remember correctly, sometime in early May, you will get an email from Sarah Kroymans following up on this presentation. And then we have lots of great other webinars and presentations coming up. Here are some here, talks in Spanish, a whole host of them, family-friendly earth care series, finding balance, making sense of it all, webinars for consumers and professionals, no place like home, recovery and health. And then there are a couple standalone webinars that we have, and you can search for all of the webinars at extension.umn.edu/courses. Would that be called a dash and dash events. You can engage with us on a variety of platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. Okay, so I'm gonna stop share. Rick, if you want to stop the recording, please.